right? No matter how you explain it, no matter how you let it out, it's merely a matter of you did do that thing. And whether it is I didn't mean to hurt you, but I done this thing, you done it. We are back with another episode. Okay, so we are on episode 6 of the Toxic Traits series for the Ordinary Connection podcast. And again, it is still me, same host, Keegan. Right, so we're going to get straight into it. I'm getting a little bit quicker with these vibe setting situations. Right, so today's topic for the last of what it is that we are going to be talking about in terms of the Toxic series is going to be anger and indifference. Okay, now I don't know if you know what these things mean, I don't know if you care what these things mean, but to me, anger and indifference are probably very good bedfellows, because of the fact that if I look at it, a lot of people want to know who cares about them, why they care about them, how deeply they care about them, right? And indifference can kind of get in the way of that. And sometimes it's not even that you know you're being indifferent, because there's so many different ways to be indifferent. And then with anger, anger is a very dangerous emotion because a lot of the times people lose control. Okay, but like always, we will keep it simple by starting with a definition. So, first definition we're going to go with is anger. Anger is an Anger is an intense emotional response, often triggered by frustration, injustice, or perceived threats. It can manifest as a range of reactions from irritation to rage. And then second definition is for indifference. Indifference is a lack of interest, concern, or emotion towards something or someone. It reflects a sense of detachment or apathy. So what the hell does that mean? Right? Okay, so I've kind of grown to love a word, but fundamentally it means the same thing. So the word that I like using is the word jaded. Right? Now jaded, again, by definition, is referred to as being bored or lacking enthusiasm, typically after having had too much of something. Now, let's make that about people. Because obviously, how does this tie into gaslighting? How does it tie into a toxic trait? You know, those types of things. Right, so lacking interest or enthusiasm. With indifference, we have a lack of interest or concern or emotion towards something or someone. And then anger, we have an intense emotional response, often triggered by frustration. Right? Now, if you get frustrated by someone not caring because they're not showing enthusiasm, how much control do you have? Okay? So in the little book of wonders, the saying that I'm going to start with is that your feelings don't legitimize your actions. Okay? And I think that's probably a very big thing. In last week's, or 2 weeks ago in that episode, we spoke about kind of how feelings aren't facts, but that doesn't make them invalid. True, that statement still stands. This is not contradicting or going against that. Instead, what this is saying is purely because you feel something doesn't mean that you have to act on it. Just because you are anxious doesn't mean that the world has to stop until you stop feeling anxious. Just because you are angry doesn't mean that the world needs to move out of your way because you're going to turn into a steam train that's going to run over everything in front of you. Those things are going to display that you do not have control of your emotional state. You don't have self-mastery. You don't have an ability to pay attention to yourself. Now, that doesn't seem very dangerous, but what if you don't know that until someone is triggering you? What if you don't know that until you are put in a situation with people, a person, whatever you're going to call it, and they just happen to put or press or sit on every one of your buttons at the same time? That can be slightly different, right? That can be slightly toxic, but here's the problem. Where is the toxicity? Is it with you as the person that cannot feel, hold on to, and experience your own emotional states without acting impulsively on that emotional state? or is it with the person that is triggering you? Right? It's probably on both ends. Remember, whenever we talk about toxic traits, it's not about whether the toxic trait is good or bad. It is, why are they those things? When can anger be a good thing? Right? When can indifference be a healthy thing? That's what this becomes about. That's what the whole conversation is about. Okay, so in today's episode, we are going to be focusing on kind of, yes, it's important to understand that you have a wide array of emotional states. But specifically when it comes to anger, a lot of people know the extreme. And to me, anger and indifference are, I don't want to say polar opposites, but they are both extremes. Because indifference 9 times out of 10 comes across as someone not caring, or that is often how it is interpreted. And a lot of people justify caring too much as the reason why they get so angry. And that's also not fair, because someone might not know how to show you that they care about you in a way that they do for you to interpret it the correct way. I mean, someone being quiet, if they are naturally introverted, can come across as them not being enthusiastic or wanting to show effort in your direction. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they do not care. But if your mind runs, and whether you're going to talk about attachment styles, avoidance, anxious, all of those types of things, you're going to put yourself in a position where you need to understand that the world that you're experiencing is just that. It's just the world you are experiencing. Even if 2 of us are in the same situation, going through the same thing, we do not experience it the same way. We don't have the same upbringing. We don't have the same fears. We don't have the same strengths, skills, weaknesses, whatever you're going to call it. We don't even have the same resources. And whether that is mental capacity, whether that is outlook on life, whether that is levels of positivity to negativity inside of us as people, we don't all have those things continuously at the same place. You could be having a very negative day, and I could be having a very positive day, and that could just mean that I'm more inclined to see certain opportunities or deal with certain things in a lighter space. But in the flip side of that, on the days where that is not who I am and that is not who you are, and our roles reverse, the question is then, who is it that you become, and can we still have healthy and good interactions on those days where we are not the same? Right? So in terms of the advantages of anger, right, one of the nice things about it is generally people will say drunk people and angry people speak the truth. Right? That's what people say. I don't necessarily agree, because honesty is not always mean. I think honesty specifically is a consideration of the next person. It's just, I care about you, and therefore this is something that you should know. But when people talk about truth, again, they lean into the hurtful, and that's slightly problematic. But anger generally becomes a catalyst for change. It promotes actual growth in a lot of people, because also it's freeing to express yourself. I mean, something I've always wanted to do, and I see it in movies and stuff, and it seems a little bit weird, but it also seems primal and interesting to me, is that when you go on top of a mountain and you just belt it out and you scream at the top of your lungs and just let whatever you have inside of you out. And that doesn't often get rid of it, and I don't think that that's what the conversation is about. I think merely knowing that you can feel certain things and you can let them out is very, very important for more than one reason. Okay? But even if we are going to talk about the catalyst side of things, it's also where it's a catalyst, because that's also important. I mean, a lot of the times people kind of step into anger when they've been pushed to a specific point. And a lot of the times I've seen that people don't understand when they are pushing someone to a specific point, because anger, from my experience, is generally lives around boundary setting. So if someone hasn't set a boundary, or someone doesn't know that they can set a boundary with certain things, and that invisible line keeps kind of being hammered constantly by these other people around you or whatever, there are people you are uncomfortable expressing yourself to, and there are people you are very comfortable expressing yourself to. But generally we also take out a lot of our aggression on the people that we are comfortable being around. And that can be very, very, very damaging to those relationships, because Maybe they didn't know that that's what you were planning on doing, or they didn't even know that that was your intention. And that can be a very, very dangerous thing. Because if they are not aware that, I don't know, you view love as something that's like a punching bag, I want to be able to bring all of these ugly, harsh, painful ideas to you. And then when we're done with this conversation, I want to walk away and I want to be fine. Maybe that's not the type of person that you are. Maybe you are the type of person that prefers if someone doesn't open up to you. Maybe you're the type of person that you prefer if people keep their business to themselves and they don't share it with you. But if we're going to go out, if we're going to party, if we're going to have drinks, if we're going to do anything else that isn't open up and express our feelings and deal with this ugly thing that makes no sense, then what do we then do? And I think that's the trap, because anger can be good when you are having your power regularly taken away from you. But also, many people are scared of that. So what is that power being taken away from you? What does it actually mean? And I mean, if we're going to talk about relationships, I'm not going to assume that my friend wants to be more powerful than me. I should not be expecting that my partner is going to dismiss me and not pay attention to me. Those are not things that I should be living with. It can happen, yes, but it doesn't mean that that is the only way to experience life. After advantages, the easiest thing to then talk about is disadvantages, right? So the first one, losing control. Out of everything that I have a problem with anger, that's probably the reason why I try my utmost not to be an angry person. But the problem is, you bottle up something for long enough, eventually the lid's going to pop off. And when it pops off, it's not going to be fun. Because you're going to want to be heard. You're going to want to be experienced. You're going to want to be understood. But not even you understand yourself. Not even you are listening to yourself. Because of how angry you are and how explosive this emotional state is. Back to the book of goodness. Right? So, just because you feel something, it doesn't mean you need to act on it. Right? If we go back to your feelings don't legitimize your actions, generally they also don't justify them, right? No matter how you explain it, no matter how you let it out, it's merely a matter of you did do that thing. And whether it is I didn't mean to hurt you, but I done this thing, you done it. And you need to be able to acknowledge that, especially if someone comes to you and says, listen, this thing that you done, it hurt me. That's when you're moving away from the toxic energy within the toxic trait. Because it's not so much that you can't be wronged or that you're not allowed to wrong people. It's not about that. I was having a conversation with my niece, and she had met or bumped into me on a very angry day. I was having a very, very rough day, couple of days, couple of weeks. It's been a very interesting 2024. But within the experience, a day or two later, after I'd had this terrible blow up in a direction, I, in a conversation with her, apologized to her, and she asked me, what am I doing? And I said, I'm saying sorry because I feel like the way that I treated you has an ability to damage our bond. And I didn't mean for that to be the case. I am wrong. And she says, but you're an adult. And I said, yes, but that does not mean that I can't be wrong. And it's also not that I'm never going to be angry again. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the way that I handled my anger on that day, in that moment, towards you, is not correct. There has to be an accountability that gets involved when we are dealing with something that we want to change. But before that can happen, we need to know that it's something we want to change. It's perfectly fine for you to be angry and be frustrated and be let down and be distant and be close and be far and be happy and be sad. Your emotional state is not something that is meant to change the people around you. It is not because I'm sad, these people can see me and these people can't. In my head, that shouldn't be how it is. I can be a low energy friend to someone while I am their friend. I can be a high energy friend to someone while I am, and I can be both of those people on the same day. But for too many people, we don't transition into, you might care about me, but you can still hurt me. But just because you hurt me doesn't mean at any point that you stop caring about me. Maybe you're lashing out because I'm the person that you care about and I'm the only person that's willing to listen to you say this thing, or I'm the person that you picked, that you want to lash out at, that you want to punish, that you want to hurt because you're not willing to do this to anybody else. And whether that is because you see me as strong, whether that is because you see me as weak, whether that is because you see me as fragile, whether that is because you see me as vulnerable, you made that decision. And in that moment, you can do something that affects me, that pushes my buttons. And in pushing my button, I have to assert a boundary. I don't have to lose my cool to assert a boundary. The catalyst for change lives within. Why do you need this boundary? What do you want it for? Or just, this is my boundary. You cross this or you break this thing, this is going to be the consequences of it. And I don't want you to go into a decision without knowing, without understanding the harm that you might be doing to this, to us, to yourself, to whoever. Okay? So, in terms of the disadvantage, the losing control is a very, very bad thing. And that can cause harm to very many relationships. Very easily, in fact. And even, what's the classics? They say the best way to say sorry or to apologize is to do change behavior, right? I don't necessarily agree with that because you can't. The heat of the moment stuff is damn near impossible. It is so difficult to, in the heat of the moment, be like, oh, I'm just not going to be angry. No, my shit is flaring up. I don't understand what I'm feeling. I don't understand why I'm feeling it, and I'm trying to. But now, as I'm trying to understand this thing, you're just hammering me because now I look like I don't make sense of anything, right? So what do we do there? That then becomes question number one. Okay, we will come back to that. There are three things that I've put down that I need to talk about on that. Okay, but I want to start with the advantages and disadvantages of indifference. Okay, so indifference is probably my kryptonite. Maybe that's the best way to explain it. I can't stand people that don't care because I don't think it's cool. I don't think it's impressive. I don't think it's something that makes sense to me. Right? So if I go back, I just want to literally touch on the definition. So if indifference is a lack of interest, concern, or emotion towards something or someone, for me as a person, I interpret that as someone that doesn't care or someone that isn't willing to show care because of the risk of that vulnerability. Right? Because I don't think it's necessary. You might not care about the food that you're eating, but that doesn't take away from the value of it, right? And same can be said about people. You might not care about going to this specific party or being around these specific people. I get that. But not caring and not doing are two very different things. Okay? And for me, the problem with indifference is that generally it's only when you aren't getting what you want as a person that you become indifferent. And that's where toxicity lives for me. It's not I am valuable because of what I can do for you. I am a person. I am valuable because I am me. You are a person. Therefore, you are valuable because you are you. Your experiences, your fears, hell, what you can do, what you can't do, all of those things make you valuable as a person. So nobody should be indifferent towards you. There are people that will be indifferent towards you because you are not important to them. That's different. I'm not talking about a stranger you've never met. I'm not talking about a person that you've never had a conversation with. And even then, generally, there should still be some modicum of care because of the fact that good human nature says that it's bad to kill people. Right? And if it's bad to kill people, it means we don't just go around thinking about who we're going to kill. Does that make sense? Indifference is these small nuances of care that live behind effort, behind energy. And I think a lot of people don't pay attention to that. But yeah, so indifference provides a protective skin shell around a person where it permits them to almost not have any emotional pain that they display, that they are giving away to someone else, and they're bearing this cross by themselves. Now the problem with that is it also it allows you to detach, which is a good thing, right? Because you can separate yourself, and if we're saying that emotions don't legitimize the responses or actions that are kind of come out of them, it doesn't necessarily mean that just because they don't legitimize or justify it that people won't do it. And it doesn't mean that people are always in control of what it is that they're doing, which also doesn't make sense to me, because then where's the accountability? You can say, I was sad, that's why I done this. I was in need of validation, I was in need of attention, I was in need of support, I was in need of a break. Right? People can say and do anything, and there's no limitation to what it is that they can or say. And even if they say it to you, it can be a lie, and that's also fine. But the problem with the detachment is that it's good in a stressful, high emotional situation. But if that's your blanket behavior, if that's your standard character, just, I'm just detaching myself because I couldn't be bothered. Not being bothered and something not actually bothering you is not the same thing. And that's kind of the big issue within indifference, because for me, it stops connection. It's not having this high intellectualized conversation about anything. That's not what it's about. It's about, listen, my favorite color is pink. In my favorite color being pink, these are the reasons why. I like flamingos, I like this, I like that. I have a jacket that's pink, I look really good in pink, I feel attractive in pink. There's a simple statement. It's not a very deep conversation. But when you look at it and you go into it, and someone that's actually paying attention, that isn't being indifferent, they will ask certain questions. Oh, when did you learn this? How did you learn this? Right, so how have you experienced the world because of these experiences that you build up, these thoughts that you have, these opinions that you have, and how you superimpose it on the world? Okay, and then, so for the, what do I say? For the advantages and disadvantages of anger and indifference, cool. We've touched on how indifference can lead to a lack of empathy and connection with others and result in straining those relationships. With anger, it can be uncontrollable and therefore destructive and damaging, and those are the two disadvantages. Indifference can offer protection from emotional pain by allowing individuals to detach, and then anger is a catalyst for change. That's with the advantages side of things. So how the hell do these things tie into the whole gaslighting concept that we've been kind of speaking about? Okay, so if the most common response that people have is one of, what do we say, not being able to control anger, okay, right? Because that's what, when we talk about anger, that's actually what we are speaking about, right? When we are talking about anger specifically, we can also then highlight how it's actually a very easy thing to control in people. Once you know what someone doesn't like, you could do it 100 times, apologize for it, and not change that behavior, because that's a thing that could piss someone off. Just apologizing pisses some people off, right? And eventually, in turn, making them angry, and then you say, but I don't know what you're talking about. You could be indifferent to how someone is responding to you because you're not fazed by it, you're not too invested in what it is that they're doing, why it is that they're doing it, because maybe you just don't care. And that's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with not caring. Maybe they think you do. And that is then what in turn makes them angry or frustrated. And that frustration builds until it gets to anger. Lid pops off. Now it's a fight. Now it's your fault. Gaslighting gets involved. See, indifference is not the same as ignorance. Saying that I don't know I'm doing something and say that I don't care that I'm doing something is nowhere near the same thing. And I think a lot of people use those interchangeably, and that's not very often the case. But yeah, so to me, that's kind of where it touches on, but also it takes in blaming someone for their anger being the problem, it takes away from what is the actual problem. If I'm pissed at you because you are always pissy, but I'm never having a conversation about what is happening that's making you pissy. And if your answer is, when I ask you why are you angry, your answer is you, or in this case me as Keegan, then you also aren't giving me an answer which tells me you want to be pissed. You want to be angry. You don't want to deal with it. You don't want to not be angry. You don't want to overcome this anger. You just want to have this emotion and have it control you. And that doesn't really make sense to me, because there's no forward. We stuck. We stagnate the minute that is the choice that we make. You know? But also, you can downplay a hell of a lot of things with indifference. You might genuinely just not care. And whether that is about yourself, whether that is about other people, whether that is a situation, an environment, a place, a thing. And sometimes that can come out of lack, because you might never have food, so you never hyper focus on it. Or it could come from abundance. You just know that you're going to be able to eat at any point, regardless of what it is that you're wishing for. So you don't tend to pay attention to food specifically. But in both of those scenarios, I'm sure that we can come up with plenty of different angles in terms of where you would have an active thought, right? And if we look at it from an abundance poverty perspective, but we change the food example to people, relationships, types of relationships, depth of bond, questions that people ask, types of attention that you receive, different forms of attention, different purposes of attention. They are not all the same. They are not all made equal. And that's a very, very big thing. Okay, so now that we know what these things are, now that we understand what these things are, what the hell do we do about it? Right, so I think an important part, and it's also, again, out of the little book of goodness, I think one of the biggest things that maybe we need to come to terms with is that you can do your best with all of the skills, all of the resources, all of the awareness that you have learned up until this point. You can experience your feelings or your current level of understanding as law and being all that's available. You can acknowledge your emotional states. You can say when you're wrong. You can do all of these things, and they can be positive, and they can be blissful, and they can be helpful to certain people. And you can still fail at whatever it is that you are talking about and whatever it is that you are doing. Whether it is building a bond, whether it is building your life, whether it is increasing your self-awareness, whether it is helping people around you do their shadow work and get stronger, it doesn't matter. You can take your current level of anything and still fail. And it's not necessarily a reflection of you not having enough or you not being enough. It's more a matter of sometimes you will fail. Sometimes you will get it wrong, no matter how hard you want something, no matter how badly you work at something, no matter how much you try, no matter how much you do, you will fail. And that's okay. But you need to forgive yourself. You need to be mindful of the fact that, yes, I might not have the necessary resources to do this thing. I failed. Resources can be more than just physical things. You might not have the emotional capacity to understand why someone is angry at you. You might not have the emotional intelligence to understand what it is that you are doing that is hurting somebody else. You might not see something as important that someone else does. There's so many different things that it can be. But if you get hung up on it, if you get bogged down by it, you can get a bit lost. And you can be lost for the longest of times. And mentally, that's something that we also need to be mindful of. And a lot of people aren't. Right? So earlier I spoke about 3 options. Right? So the 3 options are basically just 3 things you can ask the next person. In an event of, I don't know, you feeling a desire to be indifferent and withdraw. A desire to be angry and lash out. There's so many different things. lies. Before you lie to someone, ask them. Before you make an assumption, ask them. Just these three things. When someone tells you they are experiencing you in a particular way, ask them these three things. Would you like to talk about it? Would you like a distraction? Or would you like some time alone with it? And they don't really sound like three astronomical questions. But sometimes in that emotional state you forget. You forget that you can take a break and just figure what's going on in your head. I'm not saying take months. I'm not saying take years to process something. I'm not saying put your life on pause because someone else is struggling to deal with something. I'm not saying that. I'm saying take the time to recognize that 10-15 minutes when you are raging can calm you down enough so that you don't say something that you can't take back. Taking a distraction and saying let's go for a walk together can build intimacy even if you don't talk, even if you don't want to talk. And that's also important. Okay? And then the last part of the three options is that you need to make it known that it is possible for someone to change their mind. It's allowed. You're allowed to change your mind. And that means anything. And it took me a long time to learn that. I didn't know that you can just change your mind. I didn't know that I can make a plan with someone and just change my mind because I made a plan. I'm a man and I'm stick to my plans. You forget. What were you wishing for? I was wishing for McDonald's. I'm not wishing for McDonald's anymore. You know? Okay, so yeah, basically within what do we do once we find these things? The three options is the first choice, right? Because you can do it more often. So again, it's easy. Do you want to talk about it? Do you need a distraction or do you need some time alone? That's the three questions, right? But the other thing that you can do for yourself, because that's easier when it's external, for yourself is you need to figure out what your triggers are. You need to figure out how to better practice self-awareness instead of just always taking what people say and assuming that it's not. Someone else's experience of you does not mean that that is who you are. It could just be how it is that they are experiencing you because that's what you guys bring out of each other. A liar can set someone that is not fond of lying off. And they might not understand the repercussions of what's going to happen in that person's head, but also they might become indifferent because it's like, I don't care. But a liar that doesn't get caught can also do the same thing. And it doesn't matter what you take, a manipulator, a gaslighter, a really angry person, someone with victim mentality, someone that's a perfectionist. Each of these things has a byproduct. And if you haven't, make sure to check out the other episodes on The Ordinary Connection. But yeah. Sure. Small plug, but yeah. No, okay, so I'm going to take a break from talking about what it is that we're talking about. I'm going to just do the song recommendations quickly. This week we have some goodies. There's a couple of new album stuff on here, a couple of oldies, and then one weird song. Okay, so the first song recommendation for this week is a song called Jaded by Shay Lingo. Yeah, lacking enthusiasm is not something he was doing in the song. It is a phenomenal song. It is such good energy in the song, even though, yeah, there's some quotable lyrics in that song. Okay, second one is Best For Me by Joyner Lucas off his new Not Now I'm Busy album. Also a solid album. Serenity by Litz. I'm pretty sure that's how you say the name. Whelmed by Emok, so another Emok recommendation. And then the weird one for this week is the Reckoning song by Asaf Avidan and the Mojos. Love weird music, guys, and I'm going to say it again. Please make sure to send me all music recommendations. You can find me on Instagram. Instagram will probably be the best place to do it. Send a DM to or at The Ordinary Connection. With your song recommendations, I really would appreciate it. Find the podcast on, if you are on YouTube, please make sure to follow. We are planning to be here for a long time, not just a good time. If you have any recommendations or stuff like that, things that you want me to check out or talk about, please do let me know. I am always open for those. What I would just like to do quickly is obviously just sum everything up. So yeah, when we look at all of the emotional states, all of the toxic traits, in terms of what it is that we've experienced, how it is that we experience it, the first kind of point is don't assume that it has to be good or bad, right or wrong, you or me. Okay, that's never going to be how you should be interacting with people, but you are entitled to what it is that you are feeling. You are allowed to feel your feelings, and they don't need to make sense to anybody else. But just because you are feeling something doesn't mean that you need to act on it. Doesn't mean that you need to do anything about it, and that's another thing. Okay? Understand that you can be wrong while being right, and that you can be right while being wrong. You can make a point to somebody and talk them into submission or talk them up and put them on a pedestal, and that's not going to change the fact that if you don't feel like yourself, calm, in a place of safety, those are things that are problems. And you're allowed to have those issues and those concerns, and you're allowed to do something about that. You don't need to do it out of anger, you don't need to do it out of indifference, and you don't need to take any of the other toxic traits and abuse them. It is easier to hurt people than it is to care for them. Remember that. Right? So it's just about basically just trying to build better connections, healthier connections with the people that's around us. And it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be simple. Okay, but thank you for today. It has been another episode of the Ordinary Connection podcast. This is episode number 6. I am really grateful for your time. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you are enjoying these discussions, please join them. I need to hear words. I want to see problems. I want to hear what it is that you guys are going through. Even if it's just private messages, I'm also fine with that. Join the conversation and stay connected. Until next time, remember, it's ordinary to feel, but extraordinary to grow. See you soon.